It is my great pleasure to introduce my good friend and colleague and well-known academic, Professor Carolyn Sue from Sydney. She is the current director of Kolling Institute, which is the premier institute in neuroscience research and mitochondrial disorders in particular. Caroline, very good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining WFN YouTube channel tonight.
Hi, Tissa. Great to be here.
Caroline, as you are aware, you are very passionate in movement disorders. As a trainees, we loved you a lot as an excellent teacher when you were teaching us on various things. How excited are you to see World Federation Neurology and Movement Disorder Society joining their forces together with other global organizations to advocate for Parkinson's disease in 2020 World Brain Day?
I mean, Tissa, this is super exciting, you know, seeing two of my favorite societies joining forces to really celebrate such an exciting day, you know, World Brain Day, you know, the organ and passion of our joint passion, I guess. It's such an exciting time to see, you know, two stellar institutions really come together and join forces to celebrate the worth of the brain.
And as you are aware, we both face this unprecedented pandemic, which has pushed us from all corners. We have to do same work, if not more, with even much less resources now as part of the preparation for COVID-19. As you are aware, in Victoria, we are still in woods at the moment with the second peak coming up. But then we should remind our audience that Parkinson's disease is a pandemic itself, as the doubling is at an alarming rate. I'm going to change the direction a little bit. You have an illustrious career. You basically took mitochondrial disorders in Australia and Australasia and globally, certainly in our home turf here, from almost non-existing to a fascinating entity where junior colleagues wanting to be interested in mitochondrial disorders. But I want to go back to your beginning. Tell us your childhood and your high school days and why you chose a career in medicine.
Tough question there, Tissa. No, look, you know, as a child, I was always interested, always curious. I loved anatomy and learning how things worked. At that stage, when I was a school child, I really didn't know that I was going to do neurology, but I did know that I was interested in research and trying to find out how things worked. And medicine really piqued my interest. You know, I don't have a medical background. You know, my parents weren't doctors and nobody in my immediate family were doctors. But it was fascinating once I was exposed to some of the workings of the body. So I chose to do medicine from a fairly early age. I had to battle with some, you know, some opportunities to follow music as a career, but I chose medicine in the end, and then followed through my childhood dreams to become a doctor. And then whilst I was in neurology, whilst I was in a medical student, I then came across an inspirational medical tutor who was a neurologist, Professor James Lance, and he inspired me to do neurology and recommended that I go and do further studies as a medical student, and then really was convinced after that this was the subspecialty for me.
I'm going to ask a couple of questions on late Jim Lance, who is a legend himself. But before that, I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you. As a girl, did you find things being difficult at medical school or get into the medical school?
Oh, look, in medical school, no. I think there was, you know, maybe a third to a half of us were female, so that wasn't a major problem. And so, but, you know, as you go through the careers, I think, you know, as your career progresses, then really the struggles are from external rather from internal. So I don't find any problems being female, working within neurology and working from, you know, my motivating me to do the things that I want to do. You know, I think it's fair to say that there are gender differences, and the perception of the abilities of different genders does cross your path from time to time. And I think, it's up to us to try and manage that and try and fight for equality in our profession, because, that sort of balance, provides a better solution, I think.
You had a wonderful mentor in Jim. I knew him a fair bit. As you're probably aware, I ran a special symposium for him, for which he gave me permission when he was alive a few years back, combining him and Marsden together. And so that was a gift for you. Other than that, being a non-Caucasian person, did you come across any barriers or challenges as you pursue a career in neurology and as you pursue an academic career in particular?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say that. I think I don't think I perceived many challenges. I think all challenges that I faced have not necessarily been because of my Asian background. So I'm Chinese by heritage, Australian born, and so I'm lucky in that I haven't had any discrimination from what I'm aware of. But again, what other people have thought about that. And I think it's up to you to either just get on with it and try and solve and meet challenges without trying to deliberate on those sorts of aspects and other people's perceptions too much. If there have been some difficulties, and I'm not saying that there haven't been, I just, I don't think I've taken them on board too much, and we've just got on with it. And hopefully, your abilities and your talents and your hard work and efforts to do that, to get the job done, is taken on board rather than any of those other extraneous things.
You've certainly done that very well as a global leader in this field now. It is very hard to read anything without reading your group's work on mitochondrial disorders, almost in any aspect in neurological disorders now. Viewers can check this out by searching on PubMed and other things. Well done, and thank you for those contributions. My next question is, you are happily married and you are a proud mother of excellent children. How do you balance the fairly demanding academic and you are a clinician also, you see patients like any other neurologists. I have to remind the audience on that. And you have to do administrative work also. It's not easy to be the director of an institute like Kolling Institute, where you have high-flying postdocs, PhD researchers and scientists and other clinicians work. How do you juggle these things around? What is your secret? What is your advice to others who complain and whinge and whine at times?
I don't know if I have any secrets, Tissa. I think you've got to bear in mind what you love, and clearly we have both, personal things and professional things that we love, and you've got to try and seek a balance between that. And really, I think if you follow your passions, if you follow the things that you really care about, then you can make time for things. You can trust your own judgment as to what's important at what time. These are ever moving. I think all of us face challenges trying to reprioritize, on a day-to-day basis, sometimes an hour on an hourly basis, and so even sometimes on a minute-to-minute basis, what's important. But I do think that you have to be very clear in yourself what you want to do, what your vision is, what your passions are, and then try and do the best you can with the opportunities that you have.
Thank you. Now the Jim Lance, late Professor Jim Lance, he is a remarkable human being. I never trained under him, or I didn't have the luxury of that, but I did know him a bit, and I did communicate with him at times. I want you to tell me, what was it like to grow up under his wings? What sort of a man he was as a mentee?
Well, look, I mean, I was a medical student when I first met Jim, and he was generous, bright, inspirational, passionate, and was encouraging, I think. So these are the things that come first to my mind about Jim. He, as a medical student, he was still willing to teach, still happy to stop and recognise our questions and teach us. And I think he always looked for the spark in people's eye, and I've learnt that from him, to really just see whether you can identify a passion for that may be in common with the trainees that are coming through. So I very much learnt from that. I learnt how to encourage people from a young age from him. And that, you know, he has and you know, really respected all of the generations of neurologists that he did inspire and train. Some of who have also been part of, you know, my mentors, and also you know, I've had the privilege of being able to not only be under his tutelage, but also then become you know, a colleague and really a close friend after he, you know, my career progressed. So very, very lucky to have inspirational leaders like him. And I must say that I've also been fortunate to have many more mentors after him.
And so you have fond memories about him. Caroline, my next question is, when you took mitochondrial disorders on board years ago, did you think that you were taking a risk of doing something that was not very well established at that point of time? Or did you think that this is an untapped resource and I would go and have a crack at that? What was in your mind at that time? Or did you think that you would end up in this position at that time when you were primarily interested in mitochondrial disorders?
Yeah, no, great question. Look, I had no idea where it was going to take me. I think it chose me as much as I chose it.
Right.
No, I did it really because it was fun.
Right.
You know, it was intriguing and was certainly unknown. It was new territory at the time. I had originally thought to sort of follow a career in Parkinson's disease, really, and had gone to, you know, Westmead, where I trained as a registrar. To learn all about movement disorders, and then John Morris, my then you know, mentor, encouraged me to look at a project on mitochondrial disease, which I found fascinating. Certainly a distraction from my Parkinson's disease career aspirations, but nevertheless served me well because I really loved learning about the mitochondria. It's obviously the most wonderful, interesting and important cellular organelle, which is very, very unique, and its function and its role in human disease really piqued my interest. And from then on, I was very lucky again to learn with people such as Ed Byrne and Billy DeMauro and all of their teams to understand mitochondrial function and how it really plays a role in neurodegeneration. And again, moving back to Parkinson's disease, how critical a role it plays in neurodegenerative disorders such as that one.
I believe one of your postdocs recently went ahead and looked at mitochondrial copy numbers in a bunch of Parkinson's disease patients and controls. And I think the paper was published in Green Journal Neurology some times back.
Yes.
And then you didn't find a difference between the Parkinson's patients and the controls. And then your group also has a number of papers making the notion that when we get sick, Parkinson's disease or other neurodegenerative disorders, if I get it correctly, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's mitochondrial dysfunction as well as rest of the other omics playing a role in that particular patient. Can you make it a bit more simplified for the viewers how it works? Because I think that is critically important for us who are interested in clinician scientist pathway to understand this when we see patients, if we were to push this science further to the future.
Yeah, no, look, thanks very much for raising it. Look, mitochondria, you know, have so many different roles. They're fundamental to the cell function and biology, and so it's hard to sort of work out where the starting point for neurodegeneration, the key roles of mitochondrial function actually work within the pathobiology of various different diseases. Clearly, in mitochondrial diseases, there's a different starting point than, for example, in other neurodegenerative diseases like Parkinson's disease. But as you ask, I mean, you know, we did find that mitochondrial copy number is not necessarily the critical role in the starting point for Parkinson's disease if you were to measure it from a biomarker status. What we feel is the main, one of the key elements for the roles of mitochondria in Parkinson's disease is its ability to provide energy at a cellular level, with the degenerative process, for which we're really not quite sure where the entry point is, then you can lose cellular energy with impaired mitochondrial quality control. But to put it simply, I think the dopaminergic neurons and other brain cells and other cells, indeed many other cells in the brains of Parkinson's disease patients, do seem to lose energy during the neurodegenerative process. And if you can reinstitute that energy and recycle the mitochondria, then just like you can change the battery in your cell, in your cell phone, for example, then you can restore the function of that cell phone. So, again, if there's a loss of energy, it doesn't work very well. Sometimes you can restore that by restoring the energy. Same as if your phone dies and you recharge the battery, it can work again. So that's the general concept, and we think that that's a key process that that occurs in Parkinson's disease, and an approach that we can try to treat Parkinson's disease and delay the degenerative process.
You've done a lot in this field, Caroline. Do you expect in another 5-10 years' time, most major public hospitals would have to buy a seahorse or something like that, and then start the counting mitochondrial copy numbers as they deal with some of these neurological disorders, including migraines and the stroke? I'm not throwing this question as a joke. I'm asking this question very seriously. Yeah. Given that neurological disorders are the leading cause of disability, given that the impact of these disorders are huge in economy, we really need to push the boundaries as a matter of urgency to see where we can unravel mysteries and fix things as much as we can.
Yes. Well, you raise a great point, Tissa. I think, it's what I hope in the next decade or so is that people learn to love the mitochondria and respect it for its functions, and understand a little bit more about the complexities. So most people look at, the mitochondria very simply. I certainly when I started in this area, I did. But the more you know it, the more you understand about it, the more understanding you get of how complex this organelle is. It's all, has many different roles. They're all interconnected. And to just see one aspect of it would be like seeing just one aspect of we as people, I guess. So, if we were only to show our neurologist side of us as people, as individuals, then that's not the whole story about people as individuals. And you've already covered a lot of these bases in this interview here. But there are many aspects to us as individuals, and I think that might help us to think about the mitochondria, because it has many different roles in its life, and it does its darndest to really help the cell function to the best of its ability. And this is something that I really admire about this part of the cell, and why the mitochondrion happens to be the object of my affection for further scientific investigation.
Oh, it's for the all right reasons, Caroline. My wife is a senior psychiatrist in a tertiary care hospital in Melbourne, and usually she has this knack that I would get a phone call from her saying that, Tissa, do you think this patient has an organic disease? Do you think I should ring person A or B in that particular hospital from neurology department? I basically tell her that, honey, everything is organic in brain, and we seems to look after two aspects of the disorder. You deal with hard aspects and I probably deal with less hard aspects, but it's all coming from the same organ, and we haven't touched that aspect at all. So the reason that I'm prodding this bit more and being inquisitive is to make younger people interested in this part of the cell, as it might hold a whole lot of keys that we neglected for probably over 100 years, over 50 years.
No, absolutely. So, for people who are looking for something special to look to keep them motivated and interested for their careers, I think the mitochondrial function in neurodegeneration is a great area, and there are many different neurodegenerative processes you've already mentioned. So, lots to learn. These are uncharted waters and certainly frontiers that we can explore. for those people who are really interested. So
I would also add even the chronic headaches and migraines for this part. This is not science, this is speculation.
yes.
Last year, I had to run the Migraine World Brain Day campaign, so I had to read a hell of a lot and work with most headache gurus in the world, like I do this time for movement disorders, which was my first love, as you know.
Yes.
And I then come across, as you learn through these processes, those so-called migraine-associated motor abnormalities. There are a whole lot of untapped areas that we don't have a good clue of what's happening. And who knows what's happening these young, able people's bodies at cellular level with energy pathways. Sure, you're absolutely right. It's probably not going to be one thing. It's probably going to be multiple things with all these, again, metabolomics, proteomics, genomics, the epigenetics, and whole lot. But these are fascinating areas for younger people to be interested in.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I agree with you, Tissa. I encourage everybody to sort of think about these things. So, at the end of the day, the brain, at the cellular level, this is where we can explore further. Systems and other things, processes are, as you say, proteomics, genomics, all of these things can combine, but a window to the cell biology in many different degenerative processes, stroke, headache, as you say, very, very going to be fundamental to our understanding. And then, you need to understand these fundamentals so that we can get on and improve the lives of our patients. So these, I think, as you say, as a clinician scientist, if we have the real privilege to understand the problems that our patients face, what needs to be solved, and then if you can explore that through science, particularly neuroscience, and use those skills to understand the problems that our patients are facing, then you can certainly try and improve therapies and even management with patients who are in our subspecialty. So I very much encourage people to become clinician scientists. It's a hard road. No doubt you have to learn two different aspects of neuroscience, but certainly a very, very powerful one. And when you know what problems to try and solve from your clinical abilities and have the tools by which you can solve them from a scientific point of view, then I think it's been, for me at least, it's been a very, very exciting and satisfying career path to choose. So I'd encourage all of those who are out there looking for which career path they should choose, then it's been a very, very fruitful one, and as I'm sure you know and have enjoyed yourself.
100%. And I always remind my junior folks that that's why we came to medicine. We were primarily interested in biology, and we were fascinated with it. Yes. Our teachers taught all these things at medical school. First year, second year, we learn biochemistry, we learn the anatomy, physiology, and then somehow post-intern and postgraduate years, we started to forget those things and become interested in sort of protocol-driven. The bunch of people that some groups ask us, you do this, and we are very good at doing that. Yes. And we stop our biological thinking that we brought us to medical school in the first place. I think it is about time that we resurrect that passion back again.
No, absolutely. And, there's no greater time in this century really to embrace innovation. And, through through research and scientific, pursuits, we can really encompass and embrace new innovations, methodologies and technologies to help us understand the problems that our patients face.
On a similar interview, I was talking to Professor Mark Hallett a couple of nights back, and I think I ended up talking to him just over an hour when he talked about late C. Miller-Fisher and Raymond Adams. And he was telling me that when C. Miller-Fisher was doing a ward round, how painful those ward rounds were when Mark Hallett was a resident, not for him, but rest of the others, according to him anyway. Right. And Miller-Fisher would not leave a patient until he learned something new from every single patient. They even made him a nickname as shifting dullness, as he would put weight into one leg and then put his thumb under the chin, keep on thinking what I can learn from this particular patient that I can write up, and then move to the other leg, and then keep on thinking, what else did I miss from this patient?
Right, fascinating.
The,
Well, but not a bad approach. I think, you know, learning from our patients, learning something from every patient is not a bad rule, because there are lessons to be learned, and you know, keeping your mind open to that sort of approach, I think, is one that I'm trying to embrace myself.
Caroline, it was wonderful chatting to you on the journey and mitochondrial disorders and other things. I got two more questions though. The other question is, I have listened to you multiple times that you want clinicians or clinical neurologists to look at mitochondrial disorders with respect, and you have been telling us that for the last 20 odd years, as long as I can remember. And of late, you started telling us that the genetic first approach rather than muscle biopsy first approach. Can you simplify this to the wider audience? Why do you say so? What is your advice to a clinical neurologist if they suspect a mitochondrial disorder?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, mitochondrial disorders are due to genetic mutations in either mitochondrial DNA or nuclear DNA, and so you know, that seems to be a great place to identify and diagnose these patients. I know prior to those discoveries that that gene mutations did cause mitochondrial disease, the gold standard was muscle biopsy. And as you know, our patients really find that often find that traumatic. Even the small biopsies that you can take are less well tolerated than a simple blood test. So we've been trying to you know, formulate you know, methodologies and technologies to assist our clinicians to diagnose mitochondrial disease with a single blood test, such as a genomic test. You know, we're particularly interested in whole genome sequencing, which can sequence both genomes simultaneously, and this I think is a very you know, fruitful way to diagnose mitochondrial disease. Of course, because of the clinical heterogeneity of this disorder, it's a wonderful opportunity to utilize your clinical skills. So history taking and investigation, examination, all of these things to really round out the art of clinical neurology are stretched in a group of disorders such as the mitochondrial diseases, whereby there are many different clinical phenotypes to learn. So I really enjoy this aspect of mitochondrial medicine, because it does help and challenge your diagnostic skills. And you know, because of the ubiquitous nature of mitochondria throughout the body, it then allows you to explore and take advantage of your general physician you know, capabilities as well, because mitochondrial disease affects not only the neurological system, but will often affect other systemic areas in the body. So you know, you can also get insights into how mitochondrial disease might be affecting that patient by exploring other systems. But one of the fundamental problems with mitochondrial disease are those genetic mutations that can be identified more accurately than a muscle biopsy with you know, super technology such as you know, genomic sequencing. So I think times are changing. We're moving on, and I think this is also, again, another aspect that's worthwhile highlighting, is that, you know, clinician scientists, we really do need to embrace new technologies and apply them, so that we can again improve the path or the journey that patients face when they have you know, a disorder that affects the nervous system.
Caroline, let's say that those words from you being one of the masters of making this paradigm shift over the last 10, 20 years with your rest of the other colleagues from other parts of the world. Let's say that we inspire somebody in one of the resource-limited Asian country or somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, yes, and one of them decided to email you saying that, dear Professor Carolyn Sue, how can I establish a similar thing in my place? Is that a very difficult, extremely expensive path to follow, or are there ways and means that they could start from the beginning. I'm sure you would guide them through the process if they write to you.
Yeah, no, that's right. It depends on a case by case basis, really, about how difficult it is and how expensive it's going to be. Clearly, doing genomic sequencing first up, where if it's not appropriate, then might be an expensive way to diagnose a patient. But clinical evaluation is certainly very, very cheap and more ubiquitous, I would say. And then, using those clinical skills to then further follow through with your investigations, I think is a very, it's a parsimonious approach, I guess, to trying to diagnose patients with mitochondrial disease. So we're not proponents for just doing genomic sequencing on everybody, but mind you, if you do a muscle biopsies often cost more to the patient, both financially and also from an impact point of view, than a genomic sequencing. So that's worthwhile keeping in mind. But again, if the patient doesn't require that test because their phenotype is not suggestive or other diagnoses are more likely to be confirmed, then one doesn't need to venture onto genomic sequencing. But yes, people are very welcome to email me. We welcome collaboration, and we also like to help patients wherever they be located in the world to find their diagnosis so that they can get on to being well managed and treated.
And Professor Carolyn Sue is very approachable and very friendly, and you can talk to her at meetings and you can email her. We became friends through academic encounters over the years, to say the least, to the viewers. And we should also encourage our viewers to take a leaf from Jim Lance's life. We both know how hard it was for him to establish the first neuroscience chair position in Australia, where he had to work like assistant physician for some 8 odd years and then do free general medical clinics for 6 months to do the first neurology clinic in Sydney at that time. So things were, just because things are hard or things are not rosy, we shouldn't give up. I think human spirit is a great thing. Despite this pandemic, we continue to do our Red Day campaign, and we still find ways to connect with each other. And if you have the will, if you have the desire and determination, nothing is impossible, basically.
I again, Tissa, you're right, and again, for people to keep in mind that if it is difficult and it's a challenge, and you have the ability and the determination to achieve it, then the impact is even greater. Because you're making a big difference. So I would encourage those people wherever you are to think about that. And again, if you feel that the challenge is something that you're able to address, then remember your impact will be great.
Caroline, my last question, I got hold of you for a long period of time then, what I promised. If people do not Google you about your personal life, what can you tell them about your outside medicine life that you're happy to share? What do you like to do during your spare time, and what are your hobbies, things like that?
Tissa, how do you come up with these questions?
I used to be a journalist in my previous life.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Well, apart from my work life, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
So, I had previous dreams to be a musician. I think that was probably a good decision not to pursue that. I ended up getting a focal dystonia. So, it was probably a good career choice to choose neurology. I have family and enjoy spending time with them, and 2 wonderful kids, a wonderful husband. So I'm very, very grateful. And in terms of hobbies, apart from music and pursuing that and having time with family, I also enjoy cooking, entertaining, and really enjoying the friendship of colleagues and family and friends. So enjoy that, which is probably why we got on so well, Tissa.
Absolutely. And we both should wind up reminding everyone that it is incredibly important for people to get most out of us through support. And we both have excellent support from our families, work colleagues, and we have the good fortune of practicing medicine in Australia, where we can learn from great number of colleagues on a day-to-day basis, almost with constant peer review also in our ward work and clinic works, which is a good thing. It is important for others to remember that we should support each other. It is all about collaboration, solidarity, and doing things together, isn't it?
That's right. I think if you want to go far, you go together.
Caroline, thank you very much. It was a wonderful discussion. We could go on chatting, but we both have a lot of other work to do also. And have a wonderful night. Stay safe, stay well, and all the very best. And hope you would run a fabulous World Brain Day campaign in Kolling Institute as well as Sydney.
We are definitely looking forward to celebrating this in the Kolling Institute, where we'll be tuning in, but also celebrating World Brain Day, which is a wonderful event. It's a real pleasure to see you again, Tissa. Thank you so much.
Likewise. We'll talk soon. Take care.
Okay, you too, and hope everybody else is safe and sound.
Will do. Bye.
Thanks, Tissa. See you.
Bye.